Lawyers of Reddit, what is the biggest well you didn't tell me that moment you've had in your career? Recently had a client's fact witness, an employee of the client, reveal at his deposition that he had signed an agreement which pays him a substantial bonus if the client wins the lawsuit. Our jaws dropped. How can you possibly give believable factual testimony at trial if you stand to earn a windfall if one side prevails? Ugh. When defense counsel asked my personal injury client, a tall, 50-ish, leather vest wearing biker, to describe the worst part of the neck injury he suffered when his motorcycle was hit by a car, he calmly replied, the worst part? That I can't give oral sex, you know, cunnilingus, as well as I used to. After a long pause, defense counsel asked him to repeat the answer. My client did. He wasn't faking. He seemed genuinely sad. It was the first time I'd heard about that from him. It was heartfelt, unusual, and interesting on a number of levels. Edit. Wow. Thank you. I'm fairly new here and have never had a comment take off. 24 hours ago I wrote this before turning in and woke up to a great day. It's been fun engaging with people, and thank you for the awards, which are among my first. Mostly, I'm glad, as the world has gone kinda sideways. A smile, a kind thought, and a warm laugh by some measure mean, well, more than ever. Thanks again, everyone. Much peace, and more love. My wife's most recent guy said his company fired him on a racial issue. Turned out the employer had an overtly racist, anti-Asian culture. Oh, but the client also kept coming to work and threatening the employer with a handgun. In a funeral home. I represented a client who was suing for jaw and mouth related injuries. I retained her regular dentist to testify as her expert witness. 2 days before our impending trial, my client casually mentions that she will be arriving at the courthouse with her dentist because they had become romantically involved and lived together for the past a year. She had more than a year at her disposal to tell me this little bit of wonderful news, and so I immediately became more agreeable to a last minute pre-trial settlement. I had a client who claimed she was discriminated against by her employer due to disabilities she sustained after a car crash. She said her disabilities were so bad she couldn't drive or sit at her desk for any amount of time, and her company refused to accommodate her by letting her work remotely. Needless to say, it was embarrassing when opposing counsel told me my client played in a full contact lingerie football league and had telecast videos of her on YouTube playing, running, getting tackled, and dancing in the end zone on the very date her doctor, who lost his license, gave her a note saying she was bedbound. I showed her the footage and she continued to lie despite having a ducking stat sheet for receiving yards when she was supposedly in the hospital. Never been angrier at a client. Had a client tell me that they had just signed a bunch of claim releases that ultimately tanked their case after I had explicitly told them to let me look at all documents prior to signing, since I had seen something similar that they had signed almost a year back. They'd signed one of these while we were gathering documents and about to take a deposition, and when I saw my client's signature on it, I just facepalmed because his signature ended up waiving away any rights they'd had to payment. Ugh. Obligatory, not a lawyer, but I watched this unfold as the foreperson of a jury. Defendant decided to be his own lawyer, accused of pulling over and switching drivers in a car while being pursued by police for driving without a license while on probation for DUI. Officer pursuing was the same officer who arrested him for the original DUI. Playing Perry Mason, defendant put his buddy on the stand and asked point blank who was driving the car that day. Buddy replied, "You mean before or after we switched drivers?" It was all we could do to keep a straight face. A client in a hearing for domestic violence forgot to tell me that maybe, just maybe, she had buried a knife in her husband's hand, and that she had also forgotten that she used to threaten him in front of her neighbors, her family, colleagues, and pets. It was a cool and crooked audience trying to defend the shamefully indefensible. I had one client that failed to tell me about a DUI, his third or fourth. I found out when he was on the stand. It was uncomfortable to say the least. The one time I was involved with a lawyer, the company I worked for was suing another, and I got deposed. My company's lawyer seemed not to want some information I had in advance, which of course the other side asked about in the deposition, and I told them. Is that a common situation? I'm not a lawyer at all, despite my username, but I feel like my company's guy was trying to give room for me to perjure myself. Like, if I hadn't told him something, I might not tell the other side when they specifically ask about it.